Welcome to another episode of the Symphony Podcast, where we break down one important topic each week in under 30 minutes. Today, Matthew and I are on the video call with a specific topic that I think both of us are stoked about because we love to drop resources on the different topics that we've learned relevant information about. And today is just going to be as I called it, a resource bonanza. We're just going to be throwing in as many resources as we can that we've learned from, and just giving a lot of different avenues to continue pursuing learning and talking a little bit about how some of those resources have impacted us positively. So how you doing, man? It's good to be talking to you.
I know, on the video chat. I'm down here in Southern California, and it's actually dumping rain outside, which is rare, but we're indoors and warm, so we're doing okay. We're surviving here in Southern California, something you hear a lot.
Feels like spring up here, man. It's
Yeah.
like warm, sunny.
I'm
The
excited
winter
to get
season
back up
is
there.
quickly coming to an end.
Definitely. But yeah, I'm excited for this topic, and I think I'll try to keep my lists are very long, especially with the books. So I'll try to keep it just a quick list without too much description of impact, but I'll try to lay out small things of what I've taken away from them as well. But I think this topic is cool just because I think, in order to progress in any direction, you got to be learning. And I think in order to innovate, you have to know what's out there and know what's come before you. And so I think the only way you can really do that is by reading or intaking information through podcasts or audiobooks but regardless, it's all about learning and pooling resources and sharing information and all that good stuff. So that's what this episode is all about.
Yes, sir. There's that legendary quote that I adopt to podcasts. It says, "The man who doesn't read lives one life. The man who reads lives 1,000." I just butchered it, but I'd say the same thing with podcasts. And you and I come at it from different angles. You do more reading, and I haven't really read too many books, but I do consume a lot of podcasts. And there's pros and cons to each, but I think just letting anyone who's listening know, like, whatever you learn the best. Like, some people listen and learn audio. The information just sticks when you listen auditorially. I don't know. And others need to be visual and read it. So really whatever works for you. And so I think it's cool. We both have different perspectives on that. So I'll get out of the way, man. I want to hear some of the resources you've got.
I go first. Notes. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll just jump right into it then. Yeah. And like you said, big reader. That's kind of the best way that I learn. And it's different for everybody. Like you said, I think it's good to just gravitate towards what comes easiest for you and what's going to make you retain the information the best. For me, it's definitely reading. And I'll actually start with fiction before I jump into the nonfiction ones that have helped me progress in a professional way. But first, I think it's important to read fiction. Just because I think it helps you creatively. And then I also think it helps you learn very important life lessons through a story that's not necessarily real or true. And I think that that's something that, I don't know, it's been a great thing for me in my life, and it's helped me be creative and think about the world in a different way. So for a few fiction books right off the top, the number one is a book called Musashi, which is, it's a thick, dense read. I will say that. It's 1,000 pages long, but you will blow through it, I promise you. And it starts on the very first page, and it just gets going immediately. It's literally about the most famous samurai from Japan and kind of like his life and his learnings. But it's written like an epic novel. So it's just this insanely epic story about this they call him a ronin, which means he's a samurai with no master and no school. And it's just kind of like, it's more so a philosophy book, honestly, and it teaches you about life, teaches you about the samurai code, the way of the warrior, and how that just, applies to life and moving forward and progressing on your path. That one is probably the number one rec. A second one is East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and that one is a multi-generational family novel so it's another pretty long one, but it's kind of about, it profiles a single family among multiple generations, and kind of just, it's an ongoing story about good and evil, morality, and it kind of brings up a bunch of ethical issues along the storyline, and just a lot of good versus evil, but in a really well told and well written story about a specific person in a family. Really gripping, taught me a lot about life, and just about the value of being a good person and being virtuous throughout. Siddartha and The Alchemist are two that I would recommend too. They're kind of in the same ballpark of, and The Alchemist, I feel like everybody knows that one. That's just like a must read if you want to go on your own path at all or do anything creative with your life. I think it just kind of like lights that fire within you of knowing that you can take on anything and kind of put yourself out there and go on your own journey and find yourself along the way. Siddhartha is very much along those same lines.
I could use some of that.
Yeah, there you go. Well, there's 2 of them for you. Definitely read those 2. I'll jump over to the nonfiction ones that have really kind of helped me along my way as well. I think one right off the bat.
Before you do that, though, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My bad. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you're good. I was rambling.
I wanted to put no, you're good. I just want to put a really solid kind of like punctuation point on what you're saying here. And I'm taking in, which is that you're getting a lot of value from fiction novels. And I think that that's super valuable because we're told all the time, like, just read Harvard Business Review and read, all these nonfiction books and leadership and self growth and all those types of things. So it's interesting that the first resources you mentioned are fiction books. I just wanted to kind of
I think it's a good way to grasp lessons about life because you're reading a story that's not true. So you have no emotional involvement or no opinion before it starts of like, oh, I don't like this person or I don't like what he's done in his life. Like, you don't know these people. It's a fake family or it's a fake situation or a fake story. But if it's a good author, which is what any of the classic novelists are, they're talking about really important life issues and morality and all types of different things that are very relevant to your regular everyday life. But it's easier to grasp those lessons when it's coming through in a story that you're actually enjoying reading, in my opinion.
Yes, sir.
Should we hop over to the nonfiction?
Right. Nonfiction, let's hear them.
All right, I'm just going to rattle these off because there's honestly a lot. The first one is the one that's sitting right in front of me now. I've had it on my desk for the past 3 years. It's called Tools of Titans, and your not so favorite person, Tim Ferriss, put it together.
I like Tim Ferriss.
Everyone's got but it's a big book that he compiled of basically all of these people that he admires, looks up to, the titans of his world, just leaders in the business world, in the wellness space, in the fitness space, and science, and all types of different categories. But he compiled it all into a big book, and he basically interviewed all these people, being like, "What are your, if you could give 5 bullet points of advice, what would they be?" And he has specific questions that he asks throughout, but it's broken down into 3 different sections and different kind of categories of where the people fit. But really resourceful, really tactical, and just great advice from people who have already kind of had their success and are just wanting to kind of pass it along to other people. Another good business book is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. That one's just all about startups and how to get a business off the ground and kind of the things that you need to pay attention to when you're building and when you're growing and when you're scaling. Peter Thiel, for those that don't know who he is, I think he was one of the original investors in PayPal. I also might be butchering this, but he's got a great Rolodex. Has his name on a bunch of the major companies that are out there and firing right now. So he knows what he's talking about, and just gives a lot of tactical advice within that book of how to take a business from the ground level to fully scaled. Let's see. There is Awareness by Anthony Demello, which is kind of all about this is kind of like a philosophy book as well, but it's all about the limitations of how we think and kind of bringing awareness to your life and your place in the world, and kind of breaking out of the thought patterns that have been so ingrained within our societies and within our human lifetime, essentially. So it just really breaks open your consciousness in a cool way and makes you think about a lot of important stuff. Let's see. Calendar of Wisdom. That's another one by Leo Tolstoy that I keep on my desk. Is this all off
the top of your head?
For the most part, yeah. Dude, I'm telling you, I'd spend a lot of time reading. I think it's massively important. Yeah. But Calendar of Wisdom is something that Leo Tolstoy, who's a philosopher from way back, he put it together of it's every page is for a specific day of the year, and each page has 3 or 4 little bullet points from people that he admired and he respected in his life and looked up to and read. And so he compiles those just thoughts for a single day, and then he adds his own little 2 or 3 sentences at the end of each page. So you can either read it front to back or just take it a day at a time, but it's just little things to think about, little meditations, little great gratitude tips, or just ways to look at the world from all of these ancient philosophers and people throughout history who have made a huge impact on the world and the progress of people and human nature and all that stuff. Let's see. Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler is a really good one. That's all about human potential and kind of entering flow states, and just kind of like how shifts of consciousness can drive human performance. And he takes it from a lot of different angles. So that's a good one. Born to Run by Christopher McDougal changed my perspective of running and fitness in general. That one was awesome. About a tribe in Mexico who literally runs barefoot through the desert for basically the equivalent of ultra marathons every single day. Just absolutely wild. Let's see. It's so funny. I made a list and wrote some down on my whiteboard, and I'm only like halfway through the list. So I feel like maybe I'll just rattle off a couple of names, and then we'll just, and then we can move on. But, there's a book called Flow that's really good too. It kind of touches on a lot of the same things that Stephen Kotler touches on in the Stealing Fire book, just about how to enter this flow state with your life, how to, how to define progress for yourself, how to set goals and work towards those goals. Really good, really science backed too, which I appreciated, especially with something as kind of like out there as that concept. Think and Grow Rich. That's a must read. I think that's kind of all about how to manifest things for your life with your thoughts, and how it starts with the way that you talk to yourself and kind of how you show up in the world, and how the unconscious mind is picking up on everything that you're doing. And so how to use that for good and how not to waste that concept. That one was awesome. Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. That's a really good one. We've talked about Ryan Holiday before, I think.
My guy.
Yeah, it's a good one. All about kind of how it goes into meditation, but it also like profiles different people throughout history and how they dealt with really strenuous, stressful situations by kind of breaking things down, taking things one step at a time, focusing on one thing at a time, and just being present for your life activities, no matter what they are, and how that will basically lead to better output for yourself. And then obviously Creative Calling by Chase Jarvis. That was good. Another one about just how to get yourself out there and go after what you're passionate about, and kind of some things to think about along the way. Okay. I think that's a great list. So we'll stop there. And then honestly, there should be like 5 parts to this, because books have changed my life, man. And they've made me think way outside the box and have allowed me to enjoy thousands of perspectives from other people and apply them to my own life in ways that are helpful, which is ultimately what we're trying to do with this Symphony platform anyway. So, but I'll stop my list there for today. We'll pick it up another time.
Yes, sir. And I think, it's great for us to just talk through a little bit of these resources, but honestly, I think most of the value on this podcast is just going to be the links that are just in the description. Yeah. No need to listen to the whole episode. And this is going to be an episode you could always go back to. What was his list of books that, that kind of came to top of mind when it came to the resources that have made you the person that you are? And I also, as you're going through this list, you've got Tim Ferriss, Ryan Holiday, Stephen Kotler. All 3 have been guests on the Chase Jarvis live show that I edit and that I've learned so much from. It's one of the top resources that I'm going to mention. And I have a list of podcasts from the show that I've personally learned from, but I just think it's worth noting that some of the same exact information, it might be packaged differently in a conversation format versus a book, but we are able to have a conversation about the same people and the same topics without me necessarily having read the book and you necessarily listening to the interviews with the podcast guests or with the authors or whatnot. So I just think it's cool. I do think that just listening to you, man, it sounds like you really do retain the information. And when I listen to podcasts, I don't think I retain quite as much information. It's just there's so much, and it's not formatted necessarily in a way for your brain to cement it in, but there can be a little tip or a resource from a conversation that can be super valuable on itself. So Just reflecting a little bit
I feel like
after.
it's there. It'll be there on your mind. Like if you hear it in a podcast, I feel like it just gets stored somewhere in the back of your mind. And then whenever the conversation comes to a relevant place, it just makes you remember that. And then you're like, oh wait, yeah, I actually do know this or that from whatever the episode was whenever you listen to it. It's there somewhere. The brain is a crazy organism.
Yeah. And just establishing, like we talk a lot about mindset, but in Chase's creative calling, he's got the pyramid of how to actualize your goals. And it's super simple. At the bottom of that pyramid, put my hands up here, is mindset. And you can really learn a lot about mindset just by listening to people speak. You don't necessarily need to read books if that's what you want to do, that's also a possible way to do it. But I've personally felt like my mindset has changed and grown so much from listening to these, as Tim Ferriss calls them, titans, but just people that have done things that they're passionate about and carved some path for themselves. And that just fires me up to do the same thing. So, all right, you ready to buckle in and hear my list of podcasts?
I'm ready. Take me on a ride. Let's go.
All right. And I just want to preface this because I think a lot of people wish that they could just get like the one or two best conversations from each podcast. Like tell me the top 3 podcasts from Joe Rogan or Chase Jarvis or Rich Roll or whoever. And that's a pretty hard thing to do because everyone's different. Everyone's looking for different things to grow into, and different messages are going to resonate with different people. But here's, for me, some of them that I've really enjoyed and learned from. So can't go anywhere without starting on the Joe Rogan podcast. Huge inspiration for the way I do my show on Adventure Creator. Has a wide range of really fascinating guests, long conversations, plenty of space to actually get deep into topics. So the first one I'm going to mention is with Jordan Peterson. And again, all these are going to be linked, episode 1139. And I think Jordan Peterson is someone who's just encouraging you to be a better person and to take accountability for your life, to see where you're coming up short, not to blame the external world, but to really look inward and say, okay, why am I coming up short in my relationships? Or why are people not respecting me for certain reasons? Rather than blame the world, take accountability. And he wrote a book called 12 Rules for Life. One of those rules is just sit up with your shoulders back and have good posture, kind of you deserve it, and treating yourself the right way, similar to how you were talking about, just kind of like those foundational things. It's the same thing, just our bodies. And he talks a lot about some different perspectives on just being a better human. Matthew Walker on sleep, shorter life. That's literally all you need to know from that podcast, but he goes deep on the science of sleep. He's one of the leading researchers. And I think at the time when I listened to that podcast, I was more in the mindset of like, oh, I don't need to sleep. Like sleep is for the weak. I just got to grind. And essentially that's the opposite of what's going to be the best in the long term. And next I've got Dr. Rhonda Patrick, super, super knowledgeable woman she's a scientist and a doctor on nutrition. And she's got a lot to say. She was talking about vitamin D supplementation with COVID, and also just very, very knowledgeable. Great follow on Instagram. And then the last one is just a little bit random, but something that I'm just been interested in over the years. And that's Graham Hancock on psychedelics.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The history of human civilization. I think it's fascinating that we don't have a really good understanding of how people migrated. Like, were there people living in the Amazon a million years ago, or, did people come across from Alaska in the last ice age or whatever? And he really throws the entire like mainstream understanding of the history of the world on its ass, and has been doing that for more than 20 years in the face of widespread criticism. He's held strong, and now the science and the evidence is really coming out to support him. So he's a super cool guy to listen to. Talks a little bit about ayahuasca and experiences with DMT and things like that. But so that's my 4, just 4 I enjoyed from Rogan. You ready for some Chase Jarvis action?
Roll into it. Yep.
So I never really listened to Chase Jarvis until I actually started editing the podcast. It was super transformational for me as a young professional to listen to Chase's show, because it's all about creativity, entrepreneurship, and carving the path in life that you want. And the idea that he talks about in Creative Calling, which you also read and I've read part of, is just this basic concept that we're all born creative. Part of being a human being is we're creative machines. Secondly, creativity is an infinite resource. There's no amount, like you can just, the more you use, the more you have, essentially. It's a Maya Angelou take. But third, and this is kind of the punchline of Chase's book, it's by creating in small daily ways, we ultimately create the life that we're going to live. And when you realize that, and you realize the decisions that I make right now, to listen to a podcast, to write a blog, or to turn on the TV, to kick back on the couch and watch Netflix, those decisions have this compounding effect over time. And 5 years from now, you're going to be in a place that is impacted by each one of those small little decisions on a grand scale. So that has been super empowering for me, just to take my future and really take it into my own hands, in the sense of knowing that the little decisions matter. So if you've ever had a project you're putting off, this is what I wrote. Or if you want to make a career pivot, find community, and get some insight and guidance in those areas, highly recommend Chase Jarvis and Creative Calling. A few of the podcasts that I wrote down, some notable ones from that podcast: Seth Godin, Brene Brown, Dave Asprey on fasting, which we can get a little bit into that. I've been doing some intermittent fasting recently, and been just feeling fantastic and super energized. There's an awesome, similar to us, man. They, over on Chase, they do a Monday micro show. It's just like we do the micro pod. And on Mondays, Chase just does just only him without a guest, talking about a specific piece of information, maybe how you price a commercial photo shoot, or his daily gratitude practice. That's the one that I listed here. And if you're ever wondering, how do I do a gratitude practice? Check out this podcast. It's like 12 minutes. Chase literally walks you through his actual gratitude practice and lets you breathe and really think deeply on it. And I think that's super valuable, to have a small gratitude practice. Doesn't take much time, just even 30 seconds. And then the last one is Ramit Sethi, Make More Money. Just talking about personal finance and how to create more income streams, things like that. Whew, I'm out of breath here. But yeah, that's some resources from Joe Rogan, Chase Jarvis, and then real briefly, Jocko's podcast, super valuable on leadership, dealing with challenges, working with teams. And there's one podcast that I listened to recently with Alexander, what's his last name? Dang it. The Align podcast.
Oh yeah, Aaron Alexander, man. I have his resistance band with me right here.
No way, you just got it.
Yeah, so this is his company, The Align. I think his podcast is The Align Podcast, and this alignband.com. That's where I got this thing.
Yeah.
Keep it in my room, stretch out with it all the time. That dude's awesome.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I think you recommended that podcast with Justin Wren to me, or maybe I just saw it on social.
Yeah, somehow we both watched it. It was a great one.
Joel DeVilliers, I'm going to shout him out real fast. Space Mandela took over the Scooty Fund today, and I know that just makes this conversation less evergreen, but he was on the Scooty Fund Instagram account talking about masculinity and femininity, and just talking about how he cries multiple times a week just for therapeutic reasons. That podcast with Justin Wren made me cry multiple times. And I think when someone's truly telling their story in an open, authentic way, they're being vulnerable and they're sharing truth. Like I'll literally just break out in tears, like by myself, walking on the street or whatever in my car. And it's totally normal. I don't know. It's
healthy. I would say it's not even just normal. It's definitely healthy. Had to have a good cry here and there.
Yeah. So mental health conversation with Justin Wren was just incredible. Highly recommend that.
Definitely.
So that's all I got.
I would like to add James Clear to the Chase Jarvis show. His episode on there was really awesome, and I took a lot away from that, just about how to develop good habits and then keep them a part of your life as you kind of move forward. And just a few that I want to rattle off too, because I'm a big podcast consumer as well, and I know we like a lot of the same ones. So a lot of them that I wanted to mention, you already did. Brene Brown was on the list. She's awesome and talks a lot about vulnerability. I know you mentioned her briefly. She's been on everyone's show and has a show of her own, I believe. But then also another podcast show that I enjoy is the Rich Roll podcast. He has a ton of he's an endurance athlete himself, ex-addict, has gone through the 12 steps and and is now on the other side doing all types of ultra marathons and crazy events around the world. And he's written a couple books, but he has just awesome people on his show. And it's all about human longevity and fitness and health and diet and holistic approaches to life and all types of different stuff. But the one that I would absolutely recommend, because you kind of get a sense for what the whole show is about and the types of guests he gets on. He does something awesome at the end of each year where he basically does like a best of 2020 episode where he takes small snippets of the best episodes from that year and combines them all into one episode. So just go to Spotify, go to the Rich Roll podcast and listen to the best of 2020. There's 3 parts to it, but just listen to all 3 because they're all phenomenal. And every single person that's profiled in there just drops some serious wisdom and knowledge. And I took a lot away from those episodes, and just Rich Roll as a person in general. I've found a lot of inspiration from him. And then Paul Stamets, the mushroom lord, him on Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, or, I mean, he's done his rounds as well, but he, talks about mushrooms, mycelium, plant intelligence, nature, and is just one of the most interesting dudes that I've ever listened to. And I learned a lot from his episodes. And then Laird Hamilton. Laird Hamilton's awesome on Rogan. He's awesome on who else? He's on Rich Roll also. I think he's also been on Tim Ferriss. He's done the rounds also. But big wave surfer, makes the Laird superfood products, all of which I've used and like. And he has so much energy and just a pretty awesome outlook on the world. And so he's interesting to listen to for sure. That's a very good list of books and podcasts that we just put together.
If anyone actually wanted to go through and read and listen to all of them, we'll see in a few weeks, and you'll be a different human being. Maybe. I feel
like maybe like 2 years.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. So that's kind of just like one of the big goals that we have, of course, is information sharing on this platform. And it's just today to focus specifically on resources that have been super valuable for us, I think could provide some value.
Yeah, I would like to make just one mention too, just because I think it's important. Like learning and educating yourself and reading and taking in information is all insanely important, but implementing it is just as important. So you can't just sit around in your room and read all day and that's all you do ever. You have to live your own life too. So I think a huge piece of this is taking what you learn from all of these different resources and plugging them into your life in ways that make sense for you.
Could not agree more. It's like you could overanalyze, analysis by paralysis. You can sit and consume and consume and consume. And that's one of the reasons why I love Chase's podcast and just the community around Creative Calling, is that he's more about create than consume. Like, Definitely you need some information and experience in life in order to synthesize, to have your take on things. But you can't just be like, oh no, I'm too young, or I don't know enough, or you just tell yourself these stories that sell you short. So I love that you make that point, and I just want to echo it 1,000 times. And then the last thing I'll say is a big question that I had when I was younger was around like mentorship. And we've talked about finding and nurturing mentors on a different podcast. But these podcasts and reading books from these authors and these people that have driven the course, as you say in your words, it's essentially like mentorship at scale, which is Chase's term. But it's like the idea is you're surrounding yourself with the 5 people you want to be the most like. And if those people are, hosting podcasts or they're sharing knowledge and things like that, like you can literally have some of the world's top performers as your personal mentors because of the beauty of the technology of the internet. So take advantage of it.
Definitely. Well said. Let's wrap it up.
Under 30 minutes, Micropod Monday. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.